Thomson Reuters is pleased to team up with Lawyer2Be to answer your Brexit questions. My name is David Bickley and I'm an editor in the financial services team at Thomson Reuters Practical Law. Now, one of the questions we've had is coming from Amanpreet, who's asked what access UK companies will have to European markets post-Brexit. Now, I'm going to look at this from a financial services perspective and take the example of a UK financial institution, such as a bank or an insurer, that does business with other EU member states. What access will they have post-Brexit? Now, the simple answer to this question is that no one knows, and no one can know until the final shape of the deal to be cut between the UK and the EU on Brexit becomes apparent. Unfortunately, however, UK financial institutions cannot wait that long to take commercial decisions on their futures post-Brexit. They need to decide what steps to take to get access to EU markets now. Now, a key issue that they'll be considering is what happens to passporting. Now, passporting is the concept that if you're authorised in one EU member state, you're then entitled to carry on certain activities in other EU member states relying on that licence. So in other words, you don't need to obtain a licence in every single EU member state in which you do business. A lot of UK firms have passports, nearly 5,000 according to the FCA. Now, what becomes of passports will depend on whether there's a hard or a soft Brexit. If there's a soft Brexit and the UK remains in the EEA, even after it leaves the EU, then the position as far as passporting is concerned remains pretty much the same. A firm can passport from a jurisdiction based in the EEA just as it can a jurisdiction based in the EU. More broadly, there are disadvantages to being a member of the EEA from the UK's perspective, and in particular the fact that the UK will be required to implement EU legislation without having had much opportunity to shape its development. But nonetheless, from a passporting perspective, the position remains largely unchanged. That's a soft Brexit. If there's a hard Brexit, things become a lot more complicated. Passporting rights will go. You can't passport from a country that's outside the European Union or outside the EEA. And so UK financial institutions are in the unfortunate position that they will have to, they may have to seek a licence in each EU member state in which they do business, or at the very least seek legal advice on whether they need to or not. Now, there is one potential route to gain access to EU markets on a hard Brexit, known as equivalence. Now, this is the idea that if the European Commission has deemed the regulatory regime of a non-EU jurisdiction to be equivalent to that of the European Union, then it will grant certain limited access to financial markets within the European Union. But inevitably there are downsides, and it shouldn't be considered to be an exact replacement for passporting. Firstly, it's not available for all sectors, and it wouldn't be available, for example, for key banking activities like deposit taking or lending. Secondly, it's a political decision on the part of the European Commission as to whether to grant equivalence or not. The Commission could take its time about deciding whether the UK is equivalent. It could also withdraw the equivalence decision at relatively short notice, which is obviously commercially unattractive. And finally, as the name implies, for the UK to be equivalent, it will have to maintain a regulatory regime which is broadly similar to that of the EU. And that may cause problems if the UK decides it wants to deregulate financial services by reducing consumer protection, for example. That's a hard Brexit. It's possible that the effects of a hard Brexit might be mitigated in any transitional agreement reached between the EU and the UK. However, it's unclear whether there's political will on either side to reach an agreement. And so there we have it. At present, it's unclear what the position is in terms of access for financial institutions post-Brexit. And UK financial institutions are currently considering their options. And it may well be that some firms that have got extensive dealings in the European Union decide that they need to relocate some or perhaps all of their activities to another EU member state now, or at least start the process, so they can continue to use passport rights post-Brexit. Over the next few months, I suspect we'll hear rather more about the commercial decisions that firms are taking as to whether they want to remain UK financial institutions. Thank you.